I'd have him over Bruno.
Would you? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Right, I'll see you later. I'm not talking to you anymore. Bruno gets criminally disrespected.
I would
He's
have
a
him over Bruno.
Fantastic player.
You are listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe and William Hill.
Hello, I'm Eric Lalor. Welcome to episode 24 of House of Football with William Hill and Sports Joe. Delighted to say in studio, joining me this week are Alan Cawley and Philly McMahon. Lads, you're very welcome. Al, I always see you, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking to you.
You belt
I'm going to
away.
turn to me pal here from
Ballymun.
Ballymun.
Talk to me as well.
Philly McMahon. Philly, how's life, Philly? How's things? How's the gym going? And how's the new business? How's the Wobble?
Wobble Cafe is doing really well.
Yeah. It's a genius idea, Al, by the way. I'm in Philly's gym, right? BD7 up in
I do see you posting the whole time, yeah. When is Philly going to invite me up to the gym?
Oh, listen.
Today.
And next
You're
door
in.
next door to the gym is this cafe called Wobble.
Okay, brilliant.
So you know what I mean? You go in there and you indulge yourself with the souffle pancakes, pile a bit of weight on, and then you go into the gym and try and knock it
You
off.
get your wobble on and then you burn the wobble off.
He has it sussed. He has
Very
it sussed. So I suppose we'll kick off, lads, with a little, a very, very tiny review of the League of Ireland last weekend. Now, last weekend actually was, when you look at the weekend that's just happened it's been amazing. And the one thing that I've learned from the weekend that's just happened is that the Wolf Towns have to be playing the main stage at Electric Picnic next season. I think everyone's in agreement there after the scenes at Stradbally over the weekend. I was down at the picnic anyway, lads. I know this is a football podcast, but none of you were there. No.
I've never been to the picnic.
Never been.
No.
Never been.
Proper sports people here talking to them, you know.
Never
It's too
been.
much sport on. I'm not going down to an arts festival.
I don't know, could I hack the whole weekend job? I think I'm a during the day or at night and go home. I wouldn't. The tent thing doesn't suit me at all.
There's ways around that, Al, and I've known as becoming a senior citizen, the best way to do the picnic is to book a hotel up the road or an Airbnb and just leave site at 3 or 4. There's taxis outside that bring you up.
Oh,
and
sorry,
down
I was going to say, how do you get back to the
Yeah,
hotel?
you can get back in the next
Okay.
day, no problem. That's the dream. Once you have a breakfast and a shower, brand new.
That's what would kill me. The shower thing would kill me.
Yeah, it's the first one that I've actually kind of been enticed to go. So I said to my wife last night, "Would you go?" And she's like, "No, it's too dirty." I was like, "That's me reeled out." So
Yeah, I'd be the same as that. It's the whole kind of washroom.
Listen, the weather just made it immaculate. Anyway, that's the Electric Picnic chat done. On to football matters. League of Ireland. I was in Tallaght on Friday night and Rovers ran out convincing 3-0 winners against Bows. Disappointing performance from Bows out in Tallaght. Again, like maybe I'm looking at Bows tinted glasses, but a couple of stonewall penalties weren't given, and it seems to be a recurring theme when Bows are playing Rovers out in Tallaght. But that wasn't the reason we lost, by the way. Rovers were the better team and deserved the 3 points. Is the league title over? As the question I'm going to throw out to you. Is there 7 points cleared? There you have a game in hand. Al, would you like to come on that?
I don't think it is over, no, Eric, but I think what we found out over the weekend is the one team that I think who can sustain the best challenge to Shamrock Rovers are still the one team that I think that are very much in it, which is Derry. I always felt, obviously we previewed the games last week, that Bows were very much in their infancy in terms of where they're at with Declan coming in. Obviously a new team, his new ideas, that the main target at the start of the year would have been just Europe. They were never realistic title contenders, I felt, at the start of the season. So I think that is very much still attainable after the weekend, despite the defeat. And if you look across the city then, obviously St. Pat's suffering defeat to Shelbourne as well. They're very much the exact same scenario, because you think of John Daly coming in, a new team, it's exciting for the future, but again, they were never realistic title contenders this year either. So I think they're the two that obviously have suffered the defeats over the weekend, and kind of, I would say, we're never really in the race anyway. It was good for us to say that there was a 3 or 4 people in the race. I never felt there was. And Derry obviously beating Dundalk away from home. If they win the game in hand, they have the strength, the quality that I think can still push right till the end of the season.
And the game in hand is against UCD, so you'd imagine it's the 3 points.
You would think so, and then it's 4 points to have to play. Obviously, I think after the international window, they're playing Shamrock Rovers in the Brandywell, so it's going to be a massive game. And I still think they have the quality to overtake Shamrock Rovers. So I thought at the start of the season it was a 2-horse race. Nothing has changed my mind throughout the season. Obviously Shamrock Rovers haven't hit the heights that they've hit in the last 2 or 3 years. Nobody else has capitalised as of yet, but I still think Derry are the ones that can push them to the end. Whether they can overtake them remains to be seen, but I think it'll be between those two.
Philly, you were obviously at Bows for a while under Keith Long, and you've watched from afar, I suppose, the new era of Declan Devine and practically a whole new squad, bar 1 or 2. What's your impressions of looking at Bows from afar? I know you still have a soft spot for them and all that, and you want them to do well. But
I do, because I've worked with so many of the lads, you know. But I just think, you know, I agree with Alan. I think they started the season so well that they were kind of more I kind of got the sense they were in bonus territory,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of what they did. And then a couple of performances kind of dropped, and it was kind of nearly that kind of thought of, you know, yeah, I could see that happening. Like I could see that, you know,
it was like almost inevitable.
The balloon was going to be deflated, you know. But they've come back, and obviously they had a little run there of 5 unbeaten games before the Rovers game, and you know that gave them that little boost that they needed to get back up there. But I don't really get the sense of, you know, the group believing that they can challenge for the league this year, you know. But are they building on something? I do. I think they are. I think the whole league is based on default. You know, I think Shamrock Rovers, you know, over the years you would have seen, you know, mainly 2 teams competing for the league. You don't really see that over the last couple of years, which basically means is the rest of the clubs are kind of in limbo. Derry probably being maybe a little bit of an outlier now, from last year to this year. But you look at the league challenges over the years, like in terms of Cork, Dundalk, Rovers, Bows and Shells, all those times where there was kind of purple patches within those clubs. I don't see teams being at the frequency of Shamrock Rovers at the minute.
So how does the rest of the league bridge that gap then?
Well, I think St. Pat's are going the right way about it, obviously, in terms of how well they've done since John Daly has come in. They've introduced a lot of new young players. Now, the fear for a lot of, I suppose, St. Pat's fans, and we've mentioned this, is because they're getting a lot of rave reviews, those young players, is that they'll be gone. And how do you replace them then? The likes of young Curtis, Murphy, there's already talk that they might leave. So that would be a fear for them. But I certainly think John Daly's done a really good job since he's come in. The Derry thing, I always felt at the start of the year they were the most realistic, because they've been building under Rory, to be fair, and it takes 2 or 3 years to get you up to the levels that Philly's talking about in terms of Shamrock Rovers. They're obviously on the go now with Stephen Bradley 4 or 5 years, and it took him a couple of years as well to get up to the levels of, it was Dundalk or Cork who they were trying to overtake.
So you'd say that there has to be a degree of patience with other
clubs as well. The Bows thing, I think, has gone as well as it could have gone. Season. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, and I always felt at the start of the year, and to be fair to Declan as well, you don't want to place unrealistic expectations on him at the start of the year. So I always felt the most realistic target for Bohemians was to get into Europe. Yeah. Then you have the financial windfall that may come with that as well. You can start strengthening, then bring in a better calibre of player. Obviously the financial side of things off the pitch is very good for Bohemians at the moment as well. So they're beginning to offer a couple of long-term contracts as well to hold down players, because there was always the problem, and I'm sure Philly knows more about it than me, in terms of when Keith was there, that you're losing your best players, and a lot of them going to Shamrock Rovers, which used to be a killer for Bohemians, because you're strengthening your rivals. So that seems to be eliminated out of the club as well, that they can hold on to those better ones. So I think the future is bright, certainly for Bohemians and St. Pat's, and build on what they've done this year. But I think overall, looking at the league, when you think of, I suppose, how inconsistent Shamrock Rovers have been this year, I think it has dropped the level, the standard below, because you think of, I suppose, the last 3 or 4 years when they were winning the league, if they were playing at those levels this season, they'd be 10, 15 points clear at this stage, I would think.
And that's what I mean by, like, there's Shamrock Rovers underperforming this year. Yeah. And yet they're still top contenders.
7 points clear.
So that for me is the difference between the separation and the rest, you know. You look at Man City can underperform in a couple of games and still be kind of contenders to win the league, you know. Whereas the other clubs, you'd kind of say, you know, if they underperform, you kind of go, well, they don't really expect to be up there at the top. Whereas
it's very similar, Philly. It's a good analogy, because City are the Rovers. Then you have Derry like Arsenal, who are kind of hanging on the coattails, and then you have the rest.
I nearly put Pats as like Arsenal.
Right. Well, they wear the same
kit. I nearly
kit.
put Pats as Arsenal, not because of the same kit, but because they're just happy to do their business every year, and they want to win, they want to compete, and they'll win something every couple of years.
Are the analogy, another analogy, Philly, are Rovers and City like Dublin of the GAA world?
Yeah,
you know
so
what I mean?
what basically what I would say about Rovers is, like, what I like about Bradley and what he's done is that he's created separation. So you can say that that's through innovation or through, you know, because he went in and Rovers.
Sorry, explain that, Philly, create separation.
Yeah, separation from the rest. So Dublin, when we were successful, we created separation.
I thought he was leaving his wife.
Everybody was focusing on the Dubs, like everybody focused on Shamrock Rovers. So when I was there in 2021 with Bows, we weren't actually focusing on Shamrock Rovers, we were focusing on us and what we did and what our performances were. And we outperformed Shamrock Rovers in 4 of the 5 games. The first game of the year, we was in the first 9 games. We drew them out on Tala, but every other game after that, you know, we outperformed.
They had a great run, didn't you?
Yeah.
And that's changed. Shamrock Rovers now have the edge over Bows in the last how many number of games?
I know,
because there was a period there where Bows were beating them in all the head-to-heads.
Yeah, I know, good old days. Oh, sorry, I'm doing a podcast.
It is. I think it, like as Philly said, in terms of what they're building as well, off the pitch, that matters as well. Yeah. So in terms of the revenue that are being created, the places packed out. It's probably holding them back at the moment because they could even be getting more in the door in terms of kind of creating revenue.
I do think there's if you really go into the details of the squad, I think there's still kind of things that need to be done. You know, there's still a couple of lads there that are like, I always think, you know, if there's one thing you need to get right to compete with Rovers, you know, or to win a league or win a cup, whatever it may be, get into Europe, is you need to look at their dynamic. The dynamic in their group is that they have a lot of Irish-based players that are settled, that are going to be here for a while. They're no real. Obviously, there is ambitious players there, but they're players there that are happy. They're making a good wage, and they're not really too much looking for, you know, England or any other destination in terms of what they're trying to achieve in their career. Like, if you look at Bows, you've got a couple of the Polish boys, you've got a couple of young lads, a couple of Scottish boys, you know. So when Bows were starting to get consistent, it was because they had a core group of kind of, let's say, kind of at the right age kind of player that was the leader and that was connected to the club. Rovers do that so well, and no other club in the country. Like, if you look at their age profile, it's one of the oldest teams in the league.
And that's a problem, I think. Not a problem. I think that's why the league has probably dipped a little bit, in the sense that because there's so many young players now at so many teams, it's almost become a development league, when a lot of the best players and the young fellas, and it's great for them and the opportunities in terms of young kids going away now, but Philly's right, Rovers are the only ones who you'd look at real kind of old pros, is the phrase we use, experience in the group. You don't see that dotted around too many of the other teams.
No, I suppose, I mean, to throw another name into the hat there, another team coming up on the rails now in the race for Europe is Shelbourne and Duff.
Yeah.
And listen, I wouldn't be his biggest fan, but I think he has been good for the league. I think he's box office with his...
Why are you not his biggest fan?
I just think he's...
The fact you're not his biggest fan means he's doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I think... No, but the comment he made there on Friday even, he says, I know there's a load of matches on tonight, but
the biggest
you
game.
can't tell me that the Pats of Shelbourne isn't the biggest game of the weekend. Obviously having a poke at Bows and Rovers, which, fair play to him, you got me going, is that really right, is it? But anyway, and also his celebrations afterwards, running along the Riverside Stadium, showing lots of passion. He is...
if he was your manager, you'd love him.
Oh, listen, I'd be... You know, he'd be on the podcast. You wouldn't be on the podcast, Al, just me and Damien having the chats.
We get him in some week.
Yeah,
I'll fix it up for
you.
you.
I'd love to get him in.
I know where you're coming from, because when obviously I was working with Bows, I was like, what the fuck is he doing? And then on the other hand, I was kind of like, that's interesting, you know. So he...
Do you think it's deliberate mind games and stuff?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So he does what Klopp does, doesn't he? You know, when the teams are warming up, he waits at the halfway line. I'm really interested in him in terms of the style of management he is. And the one thing that I really love about his style of management is how he cultivates the players and the fans. Like, you'll always hear the players speak so highly of him. I'm not talking about in media wise. You know, anytime I've spoke to any of them outside of that, they speak so highly of him. And that connection piece is very important to a squad like that. You know, it's not really something that's passed down through your coaching badges or through your managing style over the years. It's more, what I've learned in terms of the soccer world, it's more the opposite. You know, there's more of a, like, I'm an authoritarian type figure. Listen to me and do what I tell you, because I've spent money and done this amount of hours on my coaching badges. Whereas I'm sure he has a bit of that about him maybe, but he's got this connection with his players that he's like, I'm going to try to get the best out of you. You look at Jack Moylan, like, I remember working with Jack just before he left Bows. Really good fella, playing on the wing mostly, you know, at that stage, and work ethic was unbelievable. For some reason, there was players there ahead of him. But I remember chatting to Jack about, you know, creating a vision on what you want to do in your career personally, like, you know, not just with a team, like what you want to do, what you want to achieve. And he, like, he's obviously, Duff is seeing some potential in him, you know, to come from maybe not working with Bows, and he was on loan then,
Loan
going into Shells, and now he's got his move, like, you know. So, and what I believe, what I've heard from some of his players is that that's what he does in abundance. He believes in you, and he brings you in a certain direction, you know. So
players are prepared to run through brick walls for him, kind of thing, like, you know.
Yeah, and you get that sense
100%. Sure, that you can see that a mile off, you know.
And you mentioned,
and then I suppose the stature of who he is as well.
Exactly.
There's a lot of that in terms of, you'd walk into a dressing room. I remember the first time he came in. Actually, we were doing a thing in RTE, and I was like, kind of, he would have been a hero to
starstruck almost.
And I wouldn't have got that a lot of people who he had made over the years, players and different things. It's probably only happened a couple of times, but I remember for the first time he came in to the studio on RT, and he came over and shook my hand, and I was a bit like. And for the first time I felt a bit like fucking Damien Duff, like, and you do get that sense. So I could imagine if he was
there's an aura.
Yeah, and I could imagine the lads at Shells and the young players, and you look at him and you have Damien Duff and telling you how brilliant you are and great you are and building you up, and he definitely does that. But I think in terms of the league and the bigger picture, and there was a lot of talk when he came in about him as an addition to the league because of the stature and what he will bring. I think what we saw on Friday night is exactly what he brings, because the video went viral everywhere. And in terms of the passion and everything, you love to see that, Eric. Like, as Philly mentioned, Klopp there, when he does the thing at that gives you a bit of like,
I'd actually love to ask him like you know, where did he learn his style? I'm sure he takes from different managers. Or
he's supposed to be so intense, Philly, so in terms of like driven, like all the greats.
Did you even see that in studio with him, like the passion, intensity?
He's so intense, he's so intense, and obviously in terms of, you don't get to the level he's at in terms of, I suppose, a work ethic that he always had as a player. He's bringing that into the management, and the one thing I can see from him as well, and the fact that he's even taken this job and been so brave to take it, he could have easily gone somewhere else, or he was obviously in Celtic and his stock was high in terms of players speaking about his coaching ability. I'm sure he could have lined up a coaching job anywhere he wanted with the contacts that he had in the Ireland setup. But for him to be brave enough to say, no, I'm going to go in there, and it hasn't all been rosy in the garden. Like, it's not as if they're top of the league challenging, but he obviously rolls up the sleeves, knuckles down. So he's so driven, and even with those comments that he makes, he genuinely believes them, and he'll tell you Shells are the biggest club in Ireland, we're going to get them back to the level that we're at and all.
How far can Duff go in his managerial career? What do you think?
Well, from what I've seen, there's like, I suppose, where is the ceiling, you would ask. He'd have to be maybe successful, you would think, here for others to take him. Maybe he doesn't, because of the name that he is. Someone would take a chance on him anyway across the water.
I think if he wanted to progress his career, he'd be gone by now.
Okay.
I don't think he'd be in the league that long to be wanting to progress in England or Scotland or wherever it may be.
So unless a mad offer comes in, he's probably going to stay.
I think he's developed a purpose about himself in terms of, like, I want to do something that I'm remembered for in this country.
Leave a legacy.
Like, you know, to an extent, because it is you know, get into management, it's about ego, like it really is. And then when you have the energy that he has, it's about like I'd say he would be a type of person that would feel very unjustified of not doing something with Shells, you know, after wherever you move to another club or you move to somewhere or you stop management. I think he's that type of person that I get the sense that he's like, this is what I've done with them and I'll be remembered for that. And that's why I put so much into it.
Does he remind you of any managers or coaches you may have come across in your career or watching football? Or?
Not really. As I said, like, he has a couple of traits that Klopp would have, like, you know, where he's getting the fan base to back him up, and that's really important, because you know, you could fall into a trap by doing that, you know, because if you're not authentic doing that, as soon as something goes wrong, they'll come for your head straight away. The fans will, and that happens in most clubs, you know. So, and
it's a fickle. Football supporters are so fickle.
Yeah, the difficulty with Shells is what's the next step now on their journey, you know, because he's come in and he's settled the ship. You know, we're going up and down between the divisions over before him, and now he's settled the ship that they're staying, you know, consistent mid-table. What's their next step like? Because I think they need to look at Bowles as well, because the perception there was, you know, when you know, as we talked about the single-year contracts and stuff like that, and every year they done well, the players were going to leave. So that's possibly can happen with Shells now. I know the new owners are coming in, but he needs to be looking at Bowles and saying, right, can I learn from their transition and the transition even in the fans' perception of, we expect Damien Duff's team to win now.
Yeah,
that's a really hard part to deal with. Like.
Yeah. When they get better, the expectations increase. Lads,
even off the back of the result, they're in the mix for Europe now. So that would be a massive. Yeah, and that was again something similar to Bowes. I always felt at the start of the year it was a realistic target for them, coming off the disappointment of the cup final, which was great for them. But that was like a one step. They were
too soon.
Far too soon, and we saw that in the game. Obviously Derry beat them well, but I think in the league this year they're where they should be. They should be challenging for Europe, and they've very much put themselves in the driving seat for that now with the win Friday.
So that's our League of Ireland chat. We're going to quickly onto the Premier League. There was a hat-trick of hat-tricks over the weekend, lads. There was a hat-trick from Son for Spurs. There was a hat-trick for some fella called Evan Ferguson of Brighton, and there was a hat-trick for your man of City. the Norwegian Evan Ferguson. So what a great weekend of football. So many dramatic matches. I suppose the match that's fresh in my memory because
the Celtic and Rangers game as well.
Celtic Rangers, of course. Yeah, that was
firm.
a classic smash and grab from Celtic. But the match that I got home from the picnic to watch, and I was already on a bit of a downer, was Arsenal Man United. Weirdly, I thought it was United's best performance of the season. They were very organised, very well set up.
It's not saying much coming up.
No, yeah, for sure.
But it was.
I suppose I got a little bit of a fillip of hope when I seen Hoyland come on. I think you're looking at him going, wow, it was a decent cameo from him, and he's definitely going to add something to the team. Overall, Arsenal won 3-1, probably deserved winners overall. 2 goals in injury time. A lot of controversy with the offside goal from Garnacho. Was Johnny Evans reefed down to the ground? Your thoughts on that game, Al?
Yeah, something similar to what you've just said, Eric, in terms of it's the best performance so far, but I think you're coming off a low bar when obviously the Wolves game, which we've discussed, they were totally outplayed and they were lucky to get the victory. The Forest won, you're 2 down after 10 minutes and you're thinking, where are they going here? The Spurs won in the second half, well beaten as well. So I think it was the best. Ten Hag referenced that after the match in terms of them out of possession. It was the best, the most compact they've looked. Obviously you're playing against top quality in Arsenal, so you have to be. I thought the goal came against the run of play, but again, it's something similar to what we've seen over the years at United, hitting teams on the counter-attack with Rashford's pace, and it was a good finish. Second half of the game, like you say, was very much into balance. But what worried me most about, I suppose, the weekend, and I've been a big fan of Ten Hag since he's come in, but there was so many excuses made after the match, Eric, and I don't like to hear managers making excuses. And he came out and he referenced 3 things that I felt he got wrong. And once you start bringing in an excuse culture, I think you're looking around then and it's beginning to think this task might be above me. I'm not suggesting that right now, but you think of the business that they did in the off-season, it's nowhere near good enough to compare to the likes of City, Arsenal, Liverpool. They're still well off that, I feel. And when he's talking about the offside being onside, when they're drawing the lines and going against that, that's when I'm getting a bit worried. Then he's talking about Hoyland's being a penalty, and it wasn't a penalty. And then the Johnny Evans one,
yeah, wrestling bit 50-50 with 6
like you're not getting a free kick for that. So I think it was Roy Keane that said, I know he's a manager straight after the game and you're caught up in the emotion and stuff like that, but I think if he was sitting down here with us 2 or 3 days after and we looked at those decisions, he might have a different view on them. So that would worry me, just in terms of there was a few excuses which I haven't heard before.
I wonder was it Ten Hag who headbutted Roy Keane, actually.
I was about to say that. You got smarter and you got a headbutt after the game.
Al mentioned the excuse culture there, Philly. When is that a thing? Like, if you see a manager coming out with those excuses, for want of a better word, is it a worrying sign, do you think?
Well, I can tell you, what would happen there is they'd have I would imagine, now this is just broadly speaking, they would have a meeting during the week from a PR point of view. They'd have a PR press officer there, and I'm sure he or she will be sitting down with him saying, right, okay, here's the messages, here's the plan, if this is the outcome. And there's one way you can go this way and there's one way you can go that way. Like Mourinho was a genius for it. Like, you know, he's probably his own PR person, you know, how he deflected and how he spoke about taking the energy off the players and him being the focal point, you know. So it's very hard to get away with it at that level. Mm-hmm. It is very hard to get away with it, and it's very easily to see, as Alan said, it's very easily to see. And it's just one of those things in that world like that. You know, there's so many eyes on them, and if you talk shite, like, you're going to be spotted a mile away, you know. So and it comes down to the players as well. Like, the players, the message, the whole piece has to be pulled together by someone that's in, let's say, PR or communications, you know. Especially
when you're arguing over decisions that to everyone are obvious. The one you said there about James Clark not getting a penalty, that was a penalty, everyone can see that. So you have a better case if you're coming out with an argument for that after the match. Like, if Declan Devine came out the other night and says, well, that was a penalty and we didn't get it, people say, well, fair enough, like, I can understand that. Yeah. Ten Hag's arguing stuff that we're all looking going, really? Like, he's arguing with the lines.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the lines.
I'd argue that the line was
quick. But he's putting a stimulus into the media world. He's putting a stimulus, and it takes away, possibly to an extent. You know, you still, if you've got a good level of analysis in terms of your game IQ, but he's thrown in a little spanner there to go, right, focus on the offside there, focus on the penalty, don't focus on the performance.
Right.
But I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one, as you said, because the performance is actually all right, like, you know. So sometimes they just don't have any kind of planned information that just comes out and that they go on a tangent. And
yeah, I just think
issue.
he was speaking from the heart. He was emotional post match.
Yeah,
He
it could
said
have been
Martial
emotive, yeah.
as well did well. Like,
No, that was when he said. No, you're dead right. When he said that, I went, Larry, come on.
and we're talking about
What are you
this
smoking?
fella. Like, and that's my point about like where United are compares to the rest. Like they finished the game with Maguire and Johnny Evans.
Leicester centre
what
back
about
in
Johnny
2015.
Evans? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that an unbelievable story? Like,
And Johnny Evans. Now, Johnny
Incredible.
Evans, I don't think people should disrespect.
No,
Johnny Evans is
I
brilliant.
think he's a
he
great
should have
pro.
been still held at the club.
Yeah.
And obviously injuries probably affected him, but I have no issues with Johnny Evans being there. But you're finishing the game with a centre half who they're wanting to get out.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're looking at obviously around the problems now with Sancho coming out with the tweet afterwards as well. So I have sympathy for Ten Hag, what he's probably dealing with.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to win matches on the pitch without having to be dealing with these issues as
He
well.
just seems to be fighting fires all the time, doesn't he? It's a tough old job. Philip, we know we don't have you for much longer, so I'm going to go directly to your beloved Everton.
oh jeez.
Yeah,
You Everton, Philly?
Yes, big
Is this
Everton
the
fan.
time
Yeah,
whoa.
yeah,
It's the time I go now.
Everton. So you're blue all over. Over the land, Everton.
Yeah.
So they got their first point of the season.
Yeah.
I suppose they couldn't afford to lose it because they've already had their worst start, I think, to a Premier League ever.
Dyche's record is worse than Lampard's whenever he used to ridicule Lampard.
I know, but isn't there still a sense because of Dyche and who he is that he can get them out of it or get them out of the trouble and make them grow? Your feelings on Everton and the new signings and all that, Philly?
It's a mess, to be honest. The new signings obviously is Dyche putting his kind of stamp on it, you know that way. But I just think it's a club that is very unique, you know, and I kind of come across boys obviously as an Everton fan, but everybody you speak to in and around the club, just, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, a point is actually good, you know that way. A point is actually
Point away
good.
to Sheffield United.
You know that way, like that's how bad it is. But it's one of those things where things have been so bad, right? And that if anything is progressive, it's worth something, you know.
Yeah.
It gives you a bit of energy, you know. But yeah, I just think they're in such a difficult position because Everton over the years would have been trying to compete mid-table up to, let's say, up to Europe, and just now it's like, let's fight and get out of relegation, you know. So we're definitely on a different energy in terms of what we want to try to achieve, but it's still got kind of opportunities to the team, and the club is still, like, I mean, you've got the new stadium, you've got new signings. They're linked to every player in the world at this stage. You go on social media, every player, you know, wants to. Wobie getting 20 million for a Wobie is not a bad deal.
Where
either,
did
you
the
know.
Everton thing start from?
My dad was an Everton fan. Everton, like,
We're brilliant in the 80s.
the connection with Everton in Ireland, I remember I was telling you, is like was quite big back in the day, like, you know, and I suppose my first real kind of, you know, experience with Everton was actually them playing in Home Farm.
Okay.
When there was a connection with Home Farm Everton, they brought a team over to play in actually Home Farm, and Paul Rideout and all was playing. And, you know,
Have you been over? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Goodison a few
Goodison's-
times. Yeah,
Goodison's one of the
amazing
best.
fam,
Played in it
amazing.
and been to matches. It's absolutely
Old school, isn't it?
Brilliant. Right
Yeah,
on top of the ground.
One of the I've been to a few stadiums and
Brilliant.
I love Goodison. Yeah, so I'm hoping that energy comes into the new stadium. I hope
And
they stay up for the new stadium as well.
It's hard to translate that across, isn't it? Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Well,
you
maybe-
think of Upton Park, West Ham, and out in the big stadium. I know they're doing quite well, but it's like you're losing that as well. Like that, it's hard. And I know you have to obviously evolve, and in terms of demand for tickets and all sorts of big club like that, and they want to stretch it out, bigger stadium. But Goodison's special, like.
Yeah, and they have a big fan base, like, you know.
Massive,
and
yeah.
Strangely enough, there's the joke of, if you're an Everton fan, or you're the other one in Ireland, are you? But everybody, there is.
I know a
lot
whole
of Everton
family.
fans.
My son Alex and his friend Daniel, the O'Neills, Anne and Hughie, big Bows fans, all Everton nuts,
Yeah.
and they go to Goodison every second week. They are completely obsessed.
I'd
with
love
Everton.
to see them do well into the new stadium with Seamus Coleman.
Yeah.
Because he's been such a legend for the club. You know, who knows? Could he be the next Everton manager? He'd probably do a job somewhere else and then possibly get involved somewhere, you know.
Before we let you go, are they staying up this season?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do still think they've got time. The signings are coming in, which is bringing a bit of energy. Beto coming in, like he looks like a player that could influence the group. You know, the first couple of games, actually, you look at their XG and stuff like that, they're being quite high, one of the highest
in the league. Yeah,
Wolves, I think, when they played Wolves, I think they keep
876 shots on goal or something like that, and Wolves won 3-0. Something, I think mental numbers. But Philly, come here. I'm afraid you'll miss what you have to go to, so we're going to let you go at this part in time. Philly McMahon, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll have you on again very soon.
Cheers,
Thank you. Well, thank God he's gone now, Al. What stinking up the studio with his bullshit. No, I'm only love Philly. Philly's me trainer up in the gym. He's got me into the shape.
Good trainer.
My God, he puts me through the paces. No slacking in front of Philly. You pay the money. Yeah, standards.
You think of where he's been with Dublin. Standards, incredible.
8 All-Irelands, and it's not thought of anymore because Dublin just keep winning all the time. But what a player and what a man as well. Philly he's a great fella to talk to. Sound advice. My own young fellow's actually up training with him, getting one-on-one training.
Brilliant.
Because he works with players from all sports just to build up their levels and shows them like simple things like running techniques and how to be more explosive and all that. So amazing fella. We'll have him on again. Al, before we, on previous podcasts, we used to laugh and joke about Spurs and how crap they were. But
you were doing a lot of that laughing.
yeah, no, in fairness it was. You I did have a half spot, but you were also fairly critical of them under, especially under Conte and what was happening at the club. But we are in this new era of Ange Ball. They went to Burnley and scored 5 goals at Turf Moor. Now, I don't know whether that's more a reflection on Burnley not being the old dogged Burnley of before. Under Company, they're playing a more open and attacking, passing from the back football. Or are Spurs just at a different level right now?
I think it's a bit of both, and you're right to reference the fact that it's certainly a culture change for Burnley at the moment because they're not the dogged old style Sean Dyche type Burnley that we have become accustomed to over the last 8 to 10 years. Completely different under Company, and you can see that in the first goal. If you go back to Son, Burnley are winning 1-0, yet they've 8 players ahead of the ball and they leave a 2v2 situation at the back where it's just one ball over Darragh O'Shea's head. Son is in behind him. He plays a little pass to Solomon and it's a 2v2. Kind of like a little training exercise you'd often work on. Plays a nice little pass back to Son and he finishes, and that's 1-1, and it was almost like the floodgates opened up from there, Eric. So it's certainly a case of it's not the old Burnley, but I think when you flip it over then to Spurs, they should be given so much credit for the way they're playing under Postecoglou. And it's, again, like what I'm saying about Burnley, how they're completely different. Spurs now on the flip side are completely different because they're all out attack now under Postecoglou compared to the negative Spurs, what we were used to seeing under Mourinho and Conte. All that has changed, and I think the players are revelling in the fact, particularly Son, who got the hat-trick at the weekend. I like the fact he was playing through the middle as well because he has players now behind him, and you know how I feel about James Maddison. On and off the pitch, I love him. I absolutely, and he looks like a fellow who's playing like basically every week
with a smile on his face.
Unbelievable. And I love to see that as well. And even in terms of Philly talking about their influence in the group and stuff, you think of his impact, I'm sure, in around the dressing room as well. He seems like such a good crack, like you'd love to be around him, good company, but then he's delivering on the pitch as well. Postecoglou has already spoken about, even though he's a new signing, I think he's the vice captain, so he's given him authority in the group as well. It's almost as if the players are looking up to Maddison already, and that's a hard thing to do, Eric, when you come into a new club as big as Spurs and just to walk in seamlessly and get
command that respect already
off the others. And it just goes to show, I suppose, how good a fella he is first of all, and how good a player he is, because obviously that's what it boils down to them, because the players are looking at him thinking, wow, this fella. And you could imagine him in training. He's bringing that into the games on the pitch. He scored a great goal himself. Son gets the hat-trick.
Al, you mentioned Son there. Son played through the middle, right, centre forward, bangs in a hat-trick. Do you think he should stay there and it would just lessen the impact of losing your man that went to Germany?
Yeah, 100%, because I think when you look at Son over the years, the year before last, he was the Golden Boot winner. I think he was the equal with Salah, 23 goals. That's, I think, right, they got. So there's no issues with his finishing. If he gets the chances, he will score. You'd even look at the finish. The first one was the little dink, then the one that he comes onto with the right foot, passed it into the corner, and the last one with his left foot, Eric. Comfortable on both feet. We're used to seeing him score plenty of goals. So I think it could actually relieve the pressure a little bit in terms of finding a replacement for Kane as well. Because Richarlison, who I would have serious question marks about, not only him not scoring, his demeanour as well. He's one of those kind of sulky fella. You know, like I hate to see that. Whereas the rest of them are the complete opposite. They look like they're all enjoying their football. So I think it could be something that Ange might look at. He will want a replacement centre forward, and I think when they have the money obviously there, they will look for somebody. But I think we mentioned this on previous podcasts that he'll only spend it on what he thinks will better the group and influence the group. Just because you've 100 million doesn't mean you just go out and spend it willy-nilly.
It has to be something that will improve the team.
Yeah, and I think he's shrewd like that.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Recruitment, everybody speaks about it so much these days, and they're right. I think he will be very good at that. Obviously, you'd think of the players he signed at Celtic as well. So just because he has money, he won't go out and splash 60, 70 million unless he feels it's the right thing to do. But certainly from the weekend's point of view, he has the option of playing Son through the middle. Now, Solomon, who played really well on the left where Son would normally play. You've Kulusevski on the right. Porro playing as that inverted right full. You look at his pass for the last goal as well. So it's
an exciting time to be a sportsman.
Exciting times, it really is. My little fella's over the moon. He's absolutely chuffed.
He's like, when are we going back over that?
Like, who's Harry? Who's Harry? And we are going over the end of the month. We're going to the Liverpool game. And that's something that I want to see now. Obviously, they played Man United, but I still wouldn't have United in that bracket of the elites. So
who's Harry's new favourite player?
He loves Son.
Good.
It's Maddison as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing Maddison live as well. And again, I go back to the point, Eric, about obviously we're United, and you think of why weren't United. I've said this. I'm sick of it, but why weren't United in the frame for Maddison? He would have been ideal for United in that kind of role that he plays behind the striker as well. You could play him as one of the number 8s if you have Casemiro. You could have signed Rice as well.
Rice, I could argue. But I think with Maddison, I think he's just too similar maybe to Bruno in that role. I think so.
I'd have him over Bruno.
Would you? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Right. I'll see you later. I'm not talking to you anymore. Bruno gets criminally disrespected.
I would have him over Bruno.
Fantastic player. He was quiet against Arsenal at the weekend. But anyway, you just mentioned Liverpool there. Watch them against Villa, and I thought going into the game, this is a great chance for Villa at Anfield. Kanate, Van Dijk out injured, Matip and Gomez centre half, Watkins up against them, and I'm thinking, Villa going to do well here. Thumped 3-0.
Yeah, and I think Liverpool, and it's a strange thing to say because I felt at the start of the season, even in the preview show, that I felt they would have a good season, but it's almost like they've come under the radar a little bit, which is a bit strange to say about such a big club who've been so successful with a brilliant manager. But all the focus, I suppose, was on City and Arsenal. But they're right in the mix as well. Whether they can overtake City this year, I'm still not sure, just because of the defensive things you mentioned there with no Van Dijk, no Kanate. The two lads that come in, obviously Matip and Gomez, who you would think are backup, played really well, and that might be something that they can force their way in, because we mentioned obviously that we don't think Van Dijk is at the level that he once was. Trent, who I have major issues with defensively, but you look at him on the ball again, and you look at the pass to Salah, he's unbelievable. He's on
outrageous,
the ball. He really is, to be fair. So could there be a scenario where they get a right full, play Gomez right full, and you have Trent? But the problem with that, if you put him in as one of the midfielders, then he's been marked. He's coming in as one of the inverted fullbacks, and obviously he's
also going to have to track runners as well.
And he's finding space. Then it's almost like a free roll from in there to an extent when they're in possession. So, and that is the idea of bringing the right full in. We see them all doing it. It almost kind of, they become that free man, spare man in there, whatever you like to call it, and get that overload. So, going forward, they're electric. Salah again scoring goals.
The man Slobosly looks like a really shrewd signing.
We did a Champions League match, and it was a qualifier. It must be 4 or 5 years ago. RB Salzburg, and he was their star man. He obviously moved on then to
Leipzig.
But he was quality then. And I remember actually doing a bit of research and looking him up and seeing clips of him and all. And he was outstanding then. It was only a matter of time before he was going to go to one of the big clubs. So I think people might not have known who he was. They're certainly finding out who he is now, because he's a serious talent.
I read a report there saying it was probably a blessing in disguise that Liverpool didn't get Mason Mount, because they went after Slobosly after they couldn't get Mount.
Yeah, he's a better player than Mount.
What?
He's a better player than Mount.
Right, as I said, this podcast is over, and I will not stand for these opinions. I'm only, listen,
and I like Mount, but he's a better player.
I know I do. Do you know what? Right, we've got so it's the international break now. We've got 2 handy fixtures: away in Paris against the Minnows of France, and then at home against the Dutch in the Aviva on Monday or Tuesday, is it? Or Thursday is France, and it's Sunday. Wow, Sunday at the Aviva. So come here. The squad's been picked. Big games ahead. We are hearing news, it's been unconfirmed, that the Irish Erling Haaland is now out of the squad.
Really?
It's confirmed. Oh my God, he's out of the squad, injured. And now, come here. With the tinfoil hat on that I have, right? He only needs one more game competitive to rule out any possibility of him going to England. I didn't see an injury against Newcastle. Now, could have picked. I know injuries flared up after games as well. Now, it's said that he was tested by the Irish medical team and they deemed him unfit for the 2 games which are coming up. It's a massive blow.
Yeah, especially coming off the back of what he just did as well over the weekend. He did come off early. Whether there was a niggle there or a muscle issue or a muscle problem, we don't know. Obviously, or
was it to get his round of applause? You know, when people score
possibly,
hat-tricks,
because as you say, he didn't look injured coming off.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's not one of those situations where it's the club have ruled him out.
Yeah.
The Irish medics have looked at him and they've seen for themselves. So it's and again, it goes back to Stephen Kenny in terms of the luck. You know what I mean, and all the different things that have gone against him. And here we are facing into 2 of the toughest games you could ever imagine in a week in terms of an international window. And now we're without the Irish Haaland.
Yeah.
So,
but it's like, going to Stephen Kenny there, Alan. You mentioned him, and he has had a lot of bad luck. But eventually you have to start producing results.
Yeah, 100%,
you have to start getting points, and to qualify for groups, you have to win big games. Like we have to be going into these 2 games. I know they're massive matches against difficult opponents. France, for God's sake, in Paris, like nobody hardly ever wins there. And we've Holland at home. But what should we be expecting from these 2 games? I'm thinking there has to be at least 3 points from those 2 games. I think we should. I know France. Anything we get in France is a bonus now at this stage. But we should be targeting the Dutch and trying to beat them.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I'm saying about. Obviously, I mentioned the luck in terms of missing. Obviously, young Ferguson is going to miss out the game, but just from a point of view of the bigger picture stuff and where Stephen's at in his tenure as the Ireland manager, the luck is that's gone now. You can't be. We gave him all that in the first year, 2 years, and I was the one that was very much sticking up for him in terms of the COVID issues and injuries and all the things that did go against him, and for valid reasons. It wasn't just we were making these things up; they were all very valid reasons as to why maybe we weren't getting results. We're at the stage now, Eric, whereas this is 4th campaign if you include the Nations League, and if we go out, which it's looking like,
with a whimper.
But not even with a whimper, but if we go out even with a moral victory and we lose 1-0 and play great in France, it's still a loss, and it's going to go down as a loss, and we won't have any more points in the group. And then you're going into the Netherlands on Sunday, and if we were to play amazingly well and hit the post and hit the bar and the keeper pull off 20 great saves, but we lose 1-0, it's still a loss. And I think that's where we're at the stage with Stephen now. I would worry in terms of the campaign, because if we do suffer a defeat and a draw and it's only 1 point and we feel as though we're out of the group already at this stage, I think it could be the end for Stephen. I really do.
Really do? You think like his tenure will be cut short?
Not cut short, maybe off the weekend. I'd say he might see out the campaign.
Renew it.
Exactly, won't renew it then, because we're at the stage now, and I was his biggest fan. You know that, Eric, wanted him to do well like so many people. And the worry I have and the fear I have is if that does transpire, that the next manager in will reap the rewards of the good work that Stephen has done in terms of bringing the young players through. And that will be unfortunate, but we can't keep saying after every campaign, oh, well, it's the next one that we're aiming towards, and that's 10 more caps those young players have got, and now we're going to be great in the next campaign. And as much as it pains me to say that, but I think if we as I say, a point out of 6, or without predicting points, if we feel next Monday that we're out of the campaign, we have no chance of qualifying, you'll see out the last couple of games, and I think that could be it.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, Albert, I am putting you on the spot. Is there anyone out there who you would look at and think maybe could take over?
Yeah, I don't know. It's very hard, I suppose, and that might help Stephen at the moment, because when we do look out there, we're kind of saying, well, who is there? I know there was a lot of talk about Lee Carsley, obviously very highly regarded, won the tournament with the under-21s as well.
Vera Powell hasn't got a job.
Vera Powell, there you go. She might be in the mix, but yeah, it's hard to know, and I don't want this to happen,
no,
Eric.
Of course not.
Absolutely. I certainly don't, and I hope it doesn't. I hope we beat France and we beat the Netherlands, and who, if we were to do that, imagine
the buzz.
Yeah, and the France one, I don't think we win. The Netherlands, you're right, we should be targeting them, and we definitely can pick up points off them, potentially a victory as well. And
so would you say there's absolutely no chance of getting anything out of the match against France in Paris?
A draw would be the best I could see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because obviously
we would have to play the game of our lives, really.
Yeah.
Now, we played great, obviously in the home fixture, and we could have got a draw with the save at the end for Mainon, and it was a brilliant save, but like, you're going in against, like, look at the players that they have and all, away from home as well. It's going to be such a tough ask.
With that omission that we've just heard with the breaking news and that he's out injured, who would you see maybe who could play up top?
I don't know, actually, Eric. I really don't. You really put me on the spot, because this is just after happening. Ogbene, I always felt, does better on the right. He has played a centre forward. Would he throw him up centre forward? I don't know.
Is Obafemi injured? Is he injured or is he in the squad?
It's really hard to know. Like,
he's not in the squad now.
Connolly's obviously in the squad. Will he start him in a massive game like that? We don't know. It's just such a headache now for Stephen as well, and such a blow, because he would have already had in his mind his team selection before the lads even met up.
And a game plan.
Yeah, absolutely, a game plan. And he would have been targeting this in terms of, not like Stephen, and this is the beauty of Stephen. Stephen will think we can go over there and win.
Oh yeah.
And that's the way he has to think, right? Every manager, that's the way you have to think. And as I say, he would have been already hatching a plan over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, even long ago, about how we can obviously go over there and get a victory. But I very much believe if we were going to get that, the Irish Haaland would have been in his thoughts and in the team.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult now, work.
There's obviously another problem as well. A right full, Matt Doherty suspended for the first game. He'll be back for the Dutch game. But I mean, our options for right full.
Seamus injured.
We got the young kid from Udinese, Festi Obaselli's being named in his first squad. I wonder, is it too big of a match for him to come in and make his debut? We've got 3 left backs.
Yeah, he won't start. I think he'll play O'Shea, right wing back, and he'd bring Duffy into the team. That's what I'm predicting.
You think Duffy will come into the team?
I think he will, yeah.
Okay.
Amadale has been called in. I think Egan is out as well. He's
doubtful anyway, yeah.
And Nathan Collins. So you can pick 3 from 4 there at the back, who were very good, all of them. I think Duffy will come into the team. He's been rejuvenated at Norwich. He's done very, very well. And that frees up O'Shea, who's played at right wing back. I think, and purely with only one thing in mind, to stop Mbappe. He will be given instruction, nothing to do with going forward and creating chances down the right hand. Like you think of Seamus in the last game, obviously, and Ogben done such a brilliant job over there. So I think that's what he'll probably do, and just try and stifle them on that side. And maybe if we are to get up the left-hand side, where we created a bit of joy, I think Doherty played wing-back in the last game against France and got a bit of joy down that side. So I think that's what he'll do with maybe Manning. Could play left wing back, who's had a good start to the season as well. Enda Stevens is in the squad, James McLean, but I think he might go with Manning over there.
What will Manning bring to the team, do you think, Al?
I think he brings a bit of quality.
Yeah,
I think he has good quality, Manning. We've seen that various times, obviously, in his Swansea career since he's gone into Southampton. The manager there, Russell Martin, obviously has worked closely with him, has brought him straight with him to Southampton as well. And I think he does have lots of quality, Manning. The problem is defensively, would you worry about him maybe against the French? Possibly. But I think if we are to get a result, there has to come a time where you have to free up one side of the pitch. If you're obviously looking at Mbappe over there and us doubling up on him and basically sacrificing the fact that we won't have anyone getting forward or overlapping or creating chances and exposing us on that side, you have to then say, well, it's the other side that we're going to maybe free up and allow him that freedom to get up the pitch and try and get crosses or chances created or whatever. And I think he brings that, to be fair. He's very good on the ball, attacking wise. He loves to attack. So I think he will bring that. I think he'll be a good addition, Manning.
Yeah. Can you give us a prediction then?
Against France?
Yeah. Let's start out with France. And I know then that would obviously have an obvious effect on the Dutch game. What happens on Thursday? I'm not sure it'll have a detrimental effect, because I don't think people's given us a chance. Yeah.
So if we were to lose 1-0 or 2-0, I don't think the players would be coming away with their heads down and thinking, going into the game, because
deflated. They'll still fancy having a right go at the Dutch.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because if you look at France, who obviously have won 4 out of 4 already, so they're
going to win it anyway.
Yeah, and they're already creating that gap in the group. So I think Stephen will be aware of that. It's the Greece games and the Netherlands are going to define where we finish. And I think Stephen, even though it'll be one game at a time, as the old cliche goes, and he'll focus heavily on France, and he'll have all the prep and all the homework and all the plan done in terms of how we can go about beating them, he'll still have an idea in his head that that's the one we're targeting to get the 3 points.
Okay.
So I have no issues whatsoever if we were to lose 1-0, 2-0. I don't see it. Look, the best way of saying it, I don't see us getting any points in France,
Paris, right.
But target the one on Sunday and really go after that. And yeah, we could get 3 points against,
which kind of keeps us in it.
Yeah, and I'd love to see that, as I say, for Stephen. I really want to see a big night in the Aviva, and if we were to beat one of the top teams and give him a bit of hope, he deserves that, Yeah. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah. Well, if France beat us, which they're overwhelming favourites to do, the hope from the Irish fans and team is that they win every single one of the matches in the group, and maximum points. So then there is a free for all for that second spot. You know what I mean?
The Greece one was the killer. You know,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we have them at home as well. We can rectify that. And we do pick up points.
But to rectify that, you have to beat Netherlands as well. I think.
Yeah, true. Anyway, so there we go. Finishing on an optimistic note. Ireland against France, Ireland against Holland, double header coming up. Next week we will know the results. Hopefully we'll be Irish eyes will be smiling. You never know. In Stephen Kenny, we still believe in you. One last push, Stephen. Let's go. That has been episode 24 of House of Football with William Hill and Sports Joe. I've been Eric Lalor. A huge thanks to my guest and good pal, Alan Cawley. Al, thanks
Pleasure.
again for
Loved it,
coming
Eric.
in.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all again next week, same time. You know the story. Share, like and subscribe.
You've been listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe and William Hill.